fear is different when you have faith. And so if you believe that you can, if you believe that you will, if you believe that there is or will be, that changes the whole dynamic.
I'm Amy Jo Martin. Welcome to the Why Not Now show. You know that thing you've been thinking about doing? Yeah, that one. Why not now? Have you ever actually taken the time to ask yourself, what's stopping me? Let's talk it through. This is your chance to give that idea the attention it deserves and take action. Each episode, I have a chat with a fascinating person, from entrepreneurs to athletes, celebrities, my parents, rocket scientists, and all walks of life. We talk through a critical time when they've asked themselves, why not now? We dissect that day or even that moment, step by step. Laird Hamilton is on the show today, and I think he's my spirit animal. He's the best big wave surfer in the world, known for having successfully surfed the heaviest waves ever ridden. He's a pioneer in the world of action water sports and the primary influence behind many surfing innovations like toe-in surfing, stand-up paddleboarding, one of my favorites, and hydrofoil boarding. As you can imagine, Laird has a very unique operating system in order to do what he does. In this episode, we dissect how he makes decisions, his relationship with fear, his parenting style, how he has dealt with naysayers all of his life, and the advice he would give you on all of these topics. As I was preparing for this interview, I learned as much as I could about Laird, and that included watching the recent documentary about his life called Take Every Wave, and I highly recommend that documentary. In the show, Laird's wife, Gabby Reese, who has also been on the Why Not Now podcast, talks about how Laird needs friction in his life because that creates energy for him. And that really resonated with me. It's a big part of why I believe he's my spirit animal. We talked this through as well. Laird is also a businessman. He has a variety of apparel and product lines, one of which Richard and I use in our household. It's the Laird Superfood Hydrate Coconut Water, which is yummy. I took so much away from this conversation with Laird. It made me reevaluate my relationship with fear and really put some things that I'm scared of into perspective. We tackle the most taboo topics on the Why Not Now show. Oftentimes, you're hearing guests share things they've never shared before. In the spirit of things we don't typically talk about, you should know that the Why Not Now show is supported by Poo-Pourri. Yep, the original before you go toilet spray. It's magic. My friends at Poo-Pourri have literally taken the smell out of you know what. This pure blend of essential oils stops bathroom odor before it begins. Visit poopourri.com, and Why Not Now listeners get 20% off with code Why Not Now? That's all one word. Also, you can now get Poo-Pourri at Target. Laird, welcome to the show. It's a pleasure to have you. In the true spirit of Why Not Now, can you tell me about a time when you had to ask yourself, why not now? And we'll talk it through.
You know, I mean, I think one of the problems that I have is that once I have something on my, like an idea on my mind, it just becomes so relentless that I have to put it into action. Otherwise it haunts me a little bit. So I kind of have that problem. I have that, you know, I mean, really the why not now for me, it becomes a thing of if I want to get, you know, if I want to get it off of me or like, and get it into action, I have to start to move forward. I have to, and at the end, it's, I think I've been through the process enough times at this point with different situations, you know, whether it's an idea to make something or or even just something that I want to do myself, as a, or to even some other form of discipline or something. It's almost a discipline. It's like a that thing that holds you back. Your imagination is really always greater than reality. And the fact is that, my mom used to say that that we are all each our own greatest inhibitors, that no one stops you like you stop yourself. And, and I think that when you get over the, how do I look? What will people think? All of those things, that kind of sets you free. There was a great, and I don't even remember her name, but it was a woman that had come up with an incredible idea for some product. And I just remember her words about, she said, when you have a good idea, just don't tell anybody for a year because they'll discourage you.
Well, that's a great point. And even learning more about you, and if you take the example of when you discovered Jaws, Piahi, am I saying that right?
Yep.
Jaws? Okay. So you kept it a secret for a while, and it seems like you have this ability as such an innovator in everything you've done, from toe-ins to foiling, and it's just a part of your DNA. Along the way, there have been plenty of people that have, not agreed or maybe thought you were crazy. How did you kind of block that out? How do you, every time you innovate, adversity follows, of course. And so you've really been living in this dynamic all your life. Are there any tips or things you would say to someone who's going through that right now, who wants to do something big? It's their why not now idea, and they have all of this chatter around them.
Well, yeah. I mean, the first thing I'd say is look at the source. Who's chattering. I mean, I think sometimes we fall victim to caring about the thoughts of people that don't care about us. And if you really look around and, now if it's somebody that you respect their opinion and that you care about, and they're saying, hey, maybe not a great idea or blah, 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 you might have a tendency to give that more credence. You'd kind of respect that. But if it's just a naysayer, chirping in the corner, or somebody who really maybe themselves, they have to ask them, you're forcing them to ask themselves, well, why am I not doing something? And then their way to, rebel against that would be that what you're doing is foolhardy or doesn't have any validity. So again, I would look at the sources of the chatter. I would also stay true to your belief. Like if you really believe in something and you can feel it in your soul that it's right, or it can be done, or that kind of a thing where you can sense that it's that there's something to it. I would go with that and just block out. I mean, I think I have a little bit of background that helped me deal with that, where I used to say that I had people dislike me for the color of my skin. Why would I be surprised or even worry about if they dislike me because of something that I did? So, I had discrimination for something that I had no control of. So when I had it for something I have control of, then I was like, well, I don't, who cares? So it's a little bit of that. I think there's a combination of a few things that help you block out those things, and and then look at the again, look at the people that are talking, and then also go to the people that you admire and respect and see what they say. But even then, I've had that kind of resistance from all different directions, and still was able to ignore it. And it's a little bit of a formulaic process where the first time you do it is probably one of the harder times. The second time's a little easier. The third time, the fourth time, pretty soon you kind of get used to it, and you're like, oh yeah, here we are again. We're at the idea on the napkin stage. Okay, now we're at the prototype stage. Okay, now we're at the the production stage, and now we're at the everybody's using it stage kind of thing. So, when you've been through that cycle a few times, you that helps you too, because you kind of begin to see the pattern of the process of idea to actual, the materialization of that.
It's such a great point, especially taking away what you said about consider the sources of the chatter and doing a quick audit of who you're listening to, or maybe even who you're spending your time with, and just double checking.
For sure.
Yeah, that's huge.
A lot of people don't like change, because if you're being innovative or creative or doing something out of the box, and then that forces people to kind of ask themselves, well, why am I not pursuing something that I'm believe in, or an idea that I have, or an interest that I want. And at the end, I think some of these processes are pretty. Again, I always talk about the formulaic processes of life. You can just throw in different backdrops, but they're all basically are going to have some of the same structure. You're going to have these beginning, learning, getting better, starting to become proficient, and then eventually getting to a level of expertise. And you can just implement that anywhere. It's like it works equally as well. I think that's one thing about sports, or in my case surfing, the difficulty of learning how to become somewhat masterful at the ocean, and understanding the ocean and all of that. I mean, that process to do that can be implemented into a lot of different fields, and that's why I think you see people that have certain success continue to have certain success in other fields, even outside of the fields of their expertise, just because they're versed at the process.
That makes sense, and I think everything you're saying, it's probably difficult to come up with one why not now moment for you, because you've had so many, and so much of the time you're not even thinking about it. It's a mentality, it's a practice that's how you live your life. And you've had people tell you kind of all your life that you're different. And from being, the best big wave surfer in the world to Tarzan or whatever they say to you, what is the biggest difference between Laird and everyone else? What's the difference, and what's that delta?
Well, I mean, I think that it's I part of it was the way I was raised. There's something to be said. Thoreau has a great quote. The writer Thoreau quote. He says, "Disobedience is the true foundation of liberty, and the obedient shall be slaves." But the fact is that there's something to be said about not accepting the standard quo as the only. Just because that's the way they do it doesn't mean that's the best way, or that there's not another way. And so, I think when you have certain mentalities that you just don't accept things, in a way. And I think my my ability to suffer a little bit. I have probably a pretty good ability to suffer when it comes to the process, whatever that is, whether it's in an athletic event, or if it's in training, or if it's in nutrition, or if it's in in the process of trying to be the creative process. That can be somewhat exhausting and definitely deter you after a while. I think at a certain point, once I get my teeth in it, I'm pretty undeterrable and relentless in it, and I will, and I kind of just won't let it go. I won't let things go, at least not until I feel like I've exhausted all of the possibilities. But that could take years and years and years. And so I think that's one of the things that kind of has set me apart from kind of some of the mainstream avenues that I could have gone on, or that other people go in. So that I think, and all, there's other factors that play into it, but I think that's some of the core foundation of just what kind of sets me apart is that, that, and always looking. I'm always looking and trying to learn, trying to I'm always subjecting myself to being a beginner. I'm always going back to being a student and learn and trying to learn and to evolve.
Amazing. I want to talk a little bit about your relationship with fear. And I know you've talked a lot about this over the years, but I heard you say something about when you're about to make a critical decision or like you're riding a big wave, you have this ability to kind of speed up the process and situation in your mind before it happens. Can you talk a little bit about how you do that, how you came up with that, but also just in general, your relationship with fear?
The fact is that, and because I get asked about it quite a bit, it's forced me to think about it. And I've had a long-standing relationship with fear since I was very young, just by the nature of the way I grew up and what I was exposed to. I always, I tell people, I go, there's nothing like a scary movie when you're young, because you believe it's the truth. You believe it's real, and so it's much more scary. And when you're a little kid, things are a lot more definitive, and you become, things that are scary are much more scary when you're young. And I think I went through definitely went through an incredible volume of scary situations as a young child growing up, on some of the most aggressive beaches in the world. And, I used to get, rescued by the lifeguards, a couple times a week, literally. And, and I would imagine every time I got sucked out, I probably thought I was going to die. And so, in a real way, because of being young. And I think that process kind of developed my relationship with fear to the point where I started to begin to learn how to harness it for energy. That I use fear as, as an energy source, which is what it's ultimately meant to do. I always say, if you ever watch an antelope run with fear, they're pretty quick, and most of the time they get away from the predator who's, running from hunger. So, or running for hunger. So that's tapping into that source as an energy source. I did that over time. I did that over years. I developed that. And then, as I got older and got into bigger, more dangerous situations, I started to learn how to use it more, and nothing makes your brain move quicker and assess faster and heighten all your senses than fear.
And when you're in these life or death situations pretty regularly with what you choose to do, and how you mentally prepare for that is something that most people will never kind of experience. But when you take your look at relationship with fear and you think about business, are there any parallels to where you find yourself pretty risk averse or not in business, and how you leverage and use your lessons in relationship with fear when it comes to all the different things you have, from your Laird superfoods to your apparel lines, every different type of business endeavor that you're doing?
Absolutely. I think there's definitely a crossover or there's a level of, when you have a relationship with certain levels of fear, that it puts you in a kind of a unique position, because when it comes to things that would bring you fear in business, first of all, when things aren't life threatening, somehow they just don't have that same level of intensity, right? Like,
sure.
If you look at if you think about life threatening situations, then these risks that you're taking in these other situations that aren't life threatening, the level of risk is much lower, because the stakes are not as high. It could be your business and all that. But again, I think you have to, when you start to talk about fear as well, and then you start to talk about it, in accordance to other areas, you have to talk about faith. And so, because the fact is that fear is different when you have faith. And so if you believe that you can, if you believe that you will, if you believe that, there is or will be, then that changes the whole dynamic, right? So somehow faith changes the dynamic of what fear represents. Now, if fear is finality and it's the end and it's all destructive, then the end is all destructive, then the fear is really much greater than it would be if you knew that it was just a stage.
So in given that, there's less to lose in business, right? Of course, like your life. And
absolutely, this is not these aren't problems really, right? I like real ones.
Right.
And so in a way, when you have that perspective, I think it makes you, first of all, make much better decisions right away.
Well, do you find you're swinging for the fences more in business because it's like just not a big deal, and you find you can take some huge risks?
So you're going to be okay. Like, we're going to be okay. And again, it's back to having faith, and I think that's a different, sometimes for men and women, there's a different, like Gabby and I talk about it. And I think sometimes that because of the nature of the way a woman is built, it's a little different situation than for, that's why most of the risk takers are males, because we're a little more expendable, like we're a little bit more like, okay, where a woman's not, in the survival and the interest of of the family or of the species, a woman is the much more critical element. And so so I think that puts males in a little bit of more of a kind of unique risk-taking ability. But because of that, we have a little different kind of faith, and are a little bit more trusting that it'll be okay, even though it might not. You know what I mean? Does that make any sense?
Yeah, I think so. And just the masculine, feminine traits, regardless if you're male or female, we all reside somewhere on that spectrum.
But my point really has to do with the fact that I can take these risks because, we've been okay, we'll be okay. And so in a way, that allows me, again, having some trust and having some faith, I can kind of go into a higher risk situation a little more relaxed.
Absolutely. Makes sense. I mean, and I don't know too many people who can say that, but it makes total sense. And it kind of leads to my next area of discussion, and that's intuition. We're going to take a quick break and we'll be right back. Hi, everyone. If you are digging this podcast, please subscribe, rate, and review on iTunes. It just takes a moment and it means a ton to us. Also, after recording more than 100 episodes, I've created a bit of a cheat sheet on the top 5 things I've learned from renegades and how they get from idea to action, from dreaming to doing. I will email you the downloadable PDF when you subscribe to my newsletter. Just head to amyjomartin.com and click on Connect with Me. I've heard you say, being a big wave rider, we commit quickly. And you have to. And then also, just given your relationship with Gabby, you two started living together like 8 days after you met. So you knew. And I've heard you say it was just instinct. I knew. So you're extremely self-aware and you have very sharp GPS. If someone were to ask you or tell you that they really wanted to strengthen their intuition, what advice would you give them?
I would. The first thing I would say would be to begin to react to it as it appears. So, and start to cultivate a relationship with it. When you have instincts and you have feelings about certain things, respond to them accordingly. Now, it doesn't mean, react excessively. It just means become aware of that mechanism that, and I think it's one that we in the past we were highly in tune with, and now I think we become less in tune with it because we have the luxury to become less in tune with it. And in the past we had to, out of just our survival, just out of the being able to know, like, hey, something's not right around the corner, even though you can't see it, you could sense it. And then sure enough, something life threatening was there, but you responded. And so you didn't just walk right into it. And that we needed that out of necessity to survive, given our fragility in nature. When it comes to wild nature, we're very fragile. And so we had to have these sixth senses, these kind of intuitions and these instincts that that kind of over time have become muted because we've taken over and destroyed anything that was real dangerous, other than just the monstrous things like the earth itself. But the things that were threatening to us now don't exist. So we've been able to kind of walk away from it. And now but to reestablish that relationship, it's in you. Believe me, you start becoming aware of it, in tune with it, and just becoming, start looking more with your peripheral and being conscious of, what's behind you and what's in front of you, and and just start to work on that relationship, and it'll become stronger and stronger. You'll come to trust it, and then and cultivate it to the point where you'll have a real relationship.
So if I'm hearing you right, so it's literally practice, but it's rewarding that first kind of instinctual feeling and green lighting, whichever direction that is.
Absolutely.
Is that, yeah?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, listen, a woman is known for their intuitions, like Gabby, a woman's intuition is powerful. So, it's like, I always say to Gabby, hey, if you have any kind of weird feelings or anything that's coming up, like if I'm doing something or going somewhere, whatever, tell me, because I want to know, because I don't want to after say, well, I had a feeling, but I didn't say anything. I'll be like, oh yeah, that doesn't. So
I love it. You can borrow.
It can even be in the relationship that you can work on that too, right? So I think it's an obligation of the community. Like, hey, you have some intuition about somebody else doing something. You're like, I use a simple thing, like a guy's up on a ladder and you see him and he's like, well, if the guy keeps doing that, the thing's going to fall, that thing's going to hit him. And then you'd say, hey, you know what? If you keep doing that thing behind you don't see is going to come, and he might say, oh yeah, well, I saw that, blah, blah, but you responded to it. And that, that's the stuff I'm talking about that you start to cultivate.
I love it. And I've heard you mention the talk between the halo and the horns moments, your big moments. When you have those moments, do you physiologically feel things like, your body heats up or you get, chill bumps, or do you like physiologically have signs that you rely on?
They're not as obvious. I think it's not, I know that your body probably goes into a different state, your metabolism and things change, but I usually don't have that as a warning, right? I don't really get that. It's like kind of like, what came first, the chicken or the egg? I don't know if I get a physical precursor to what the thing is. It's normally, because so much of our stuff comes from the mind, all of our bodily functions are being controlled by your brain at the end. So it's more, maybe, in the heart of it, like in your heart, like you can sense something that way, but not usually in your metabolism, not usually in your. It's not something obvious that I'm conscious of. It could be something that is triggered, that maybe there's a tightness that happens or something that you feel the vibration or the energy, and then you respond to it.
Well, I imagine too, some of the decisions that you're making are happening so quickly when you're professionally taking on these risks that you don't necessarily have time for anything to catch up. You're just making that like intuitive decision.
It's usually, and like you said, the speed in which it's happening, that whole, first of all, the unconscious mind moves at 32,000 times the speed of like your conscious mind. Like you can't even, in a way, it has the ability to almost tell the future. That's the speed in which the unconscious mind moves. So you're talking about something that is beyond consciousness. It's so quick moving and which allows it that, that's where the slowdown comes in. That's where, that speed's so fast that it actually gives you time because of the quickness in which things are assessed.
That makes sense, total sense. And when you look at the mechanism and when you talk about like being in the ocean and how you're rewarded when you make the right decision and you perform well, and you're punished when you don't, and you learn quickly because of that. And if other sports had a mechanism where you were, if you had a golf club and it shocked you every time you didn't hit the ball right, you'd probably learn quicker. Is there anything else in life that you've done to kind of reverse engineer a mechanism into your, not in the water, but other things to where you set up almost kind of a punishment system if you're not gaining and making progress?
I mean, I think some things naturally do it, right? I think there's something, or the punishment is there, that you go to the point where you try to push that wall. It's like I talk about doing yoga, and that the wall of failure is the point where you're trying to access. That's what you're trying to go to, and you're trying to push that, but the sign, the effort really comes from you going all the way to that point and not stopping short. As far as the reverse engineering that, not that I can, not that comes to my mind instantly, other than, when you're doing anything that kind of is balance oriented, or where, where failure has a punishment. It's some of the things are just built in, it's like you're built into, I mean, first of all, when doing like breath work in the pool or something like that, I mean, you come up early, you're gonna suck water. So, I mean, you try to breathe early. You're kind of forced into, like a controlled thing where you just don't get air till you come up, no matter how bad you want it. So, I do like it when things are set up to kind of self-govern, and you're not allowed to kind of be left with the luxury to kind of dictate the outcome.
Yeah, well, thank you, because tonight at yoga, I'm going to be thinking about this application for sure, and it makes total sense. And I was recently on Kauai and got to take Gabby's kind of informal workout, which was very hard. And she had us doing some breath work afterward, and she had us put our hand on our heart. And I might be getting this wrong, but I'm curious to just understand it better. And she said something along the lines of, if you put your hand on your heart and you breathe for 2 minutes, your mind and your heart will be more in sync. Can you explain that, kind of how that happens or what that's about?
I don't know the science other than there's a synchronizing that happens between your heart and your breath and your mind in that relationship. That and I don't only that it just seems to would make sense that somehow if you held your heart, that things would synchronize, that would be, that's like a connection, like you're connecting to it. And again, there's so much we don't know about the way the system works. I mean, just the simple relationship of putting your hand on your heart and how it synchronizes your system. Again, something that we don't, with all of our science, we still don't have explanations.
Sure, but it seems like you could use that as a strategy in so many cases, even beyond athletics, to where you're getting ready to make a big decision or go into a huge meeting or something, trying that. Why wouldn't you? Why not, right? Why not have those two in sync?
Whenever you take time, whenever you take time, it seems like you make better decisions. Like if you just sit back for a moment and when you want to react, that's a tricky thing to do. But if you can just sit back, usually your reactions will be quite a bit different if you take the time to really calm yourself before.
Yeah, that makes total sense. So in the documentary Take Every Wave, Gabby said, Laird needs friction because that creates energy, and you're the type of person that kind of needs that, something to push against. How have you've gained some miles under your belt over the years? How have you managed to allow that friction to manifest in a positive way? Or have you?
I mean, I think that's a challenge, right? It's a challenge it's part of it is just, helping people around you understand that it's not towards them, that it's something that you have. That's part, and part of it is you understanding what it's for. that you can understand, and then how to constructively bend it. How do you constructively take that and not be destructive with it, be constructive. And I think that I've been spending, and I probably will continue to spend, I've spent my life trying to be constructive with this energy that I build through friction, and big wave riding was one of the expressions to that. I mean, I think now with time that I become, I would say more creative, but also I'm able to have more control over over that energy that I create through friction. I can do things, heat or ice or breathing or some other kind of constructive training, or some, again, breath work, and things where I can take that energy and constructively vent it, without, kind of, well, first of all, hurting anyone else in any way, like just, and then, or myself. And so that's, I think, become something that's occurring, as I try to mature, which is an ongoing, and I imagine always will be an ongoing process.
Yeah, makes sense. Channeling it into those areas of passion and your purpose and your skill. And so you have 3 daughters, 2 of which are still younger, and I learned that you homeschool your daughters. Yep. And they're at ages, and this is something I spoke with Gabby about when she was on the podcast, but they're at, they're young girls, and they're in this world of social media and living and kind of consuming it just as anyone would at that age. And at the top of the show, you mentioned that as soon as you can let go and not worry about what everybody thinks about you or what you look like, you become free. How do you kind of channel that into parenting with the day and age that we live in and some of the pressures to look certain ways, and with your daughters?
Well, first of all, you can't tell them anything, because that doesn't work. So, I mean, again, the old saying, lead by example, because your actions will far outweigh your words, and they're just watching you anyway. And it's a little bit like, water torture. You just have to it's like you just you just keep saying it. You say it every day. Hey, that thing, get off that. Don't be on it so much. The other thing, you just keep doing that, and you hope that, over time, that the drips of water will wear the diamond down just a little bit into a nicely shaped gem. But the fact is that, leading by example, that, if they're not seeing you, buried in the social media thing, and then they're not seeing you responding and reacting to social pressure through that process, and they're not seeing you, on that device every second all day long, and it's like all these things, right? So, but it's about what you're doing. It's all about what you're doing, and they're just, because they're watching what you're doing. You can say all the right things, but if you're doing contrary to those things you're saying, then it makes what you're saying have no validity. But at the end, I mean, I think you just try to lead by example. You lead by example, and I can tell the girls, hey, you get off those devices. You're just on those too much, and the whole thing. But then I'm on them too. So, and I might be on them for I might have some, real valid reasons to be on them. Like, okay, I'm on them because I'm looking at the weather, and I'm, researching, materials for a product, and I'm and all this, valid excuses. But at the end, if I'm on it, I'm on it. So part of it is I got to put that thing down and walk away and not have it, and not have that thing on me, and not be on it all the time. And so I'm just, I think, doing what every conscientious parent is trying to do, which is, do the best you can, love these girls, and just set an example. Like, this is the way we live. This is how we eat. This is how we, treat people. This is our value. These are our values. These are our morals. These are our, and live it. And and just hope that stuff sinks in through those, through that thick youthful skin, and makes and appears in there at some point, and when they get in control of their own lives.
For sure. And what's one lesson you find yourself learning over and over, Laird?
There's quite a few, but a lesson that I keep just learning over and over.
Yeah.
The lesson I keep learning over and over is, I'm sorry, honey. Yes, you're right.
That's a lesson. That's kind of a response, but yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's a lesson. It's a lesson because obviously there was something that went on before that got you to the point where you had to say that. So,
well, yeah, that's a good point. You could back that out and find the root systemic cause for the response.
Go back to the, I think that I think the lesson I keep learning over and over is that things don't happen at the pace that you want them to, and that you just need to be patient. I think that's the one that just keeps coming up and again. You just want things to. You have an idea of the timetable or the goal or the whatever the summit is, and you have an idea of what it is. But you just have to. It's about being patient and realizing that it'll happen when it's meant to happen and not before then. But don't become disheartened.
Mm. I needed to hear that. Thank you. That's very timely for me right now. So a few just kind of rapid fire questions for you.
Good.
They don't have to be rapid if you don't want, but speaking of pace. So if we remove the titles, waterman, big wave surfer, innovator, who are you?
I'm Laird, the person, the human, husband, father, friend.
All-time favorite book?
I got a couple, but right now, The 12 Rules of Life by Jordan Peterson. But I have to say Natural Born Heroes, Sapiens. I mean, I have a couple great ones. One of the best books, obviously the Bible. Got a lot of good lessons in there for the humans.
For the humans, yes. And, I've noticed, especially on social media, you and Gabby both refer to humans often. You say things to the humans.
Yeah.
Is there any more that you would add to that and just the meaning?
I think because we both kind of grew up around discrimination, and there's a lot of separation because of discrimination, and I think that we're conscious of it by the nature of our upbringing and the way the world is. And people will say, well, where are you from, or what are you? And I'm saying I'm a human from Earth, and if you're something different, then we can communicate. We can talk about it. But otherwise, hey, we're all in this thing together. And there's certain human conditions. I refer to it in the group because there's the stereotypes are like it's like a human condition. Humans just do certain things. Like here, there go the humans. Like because there's some stuff that you do that you just don't understand sometimes. Like how people could what are and it's like, and we always just we throw that off onto the big group called the humans, like it's like a human thing. Like there they go again, the humans, like the nature of it's the nature of our dispositions, of our societies. It's the nature of our species, the species, the human species, because it's easy. Everybody always wants to point everywhere. It's like they always want to go, well, those guys and that thing, and they're looking again for the out, and I'm just like, no, the humans. It's about the humans. Nobody's off the hook.
That's great context. Now, every time people see you use that, that word, it will mean so much more if they've heard you say this. So, thank you for sharing that. And what keeps you up at night?
Oh, probably my daughter's knee in my somewhere. Her foot, her left elbow. No. What keeps me up at night? I mean, in the past, big waves have a tendency to be in my mind. I think the wellness of my girls. I think the wellness of my girls. And then every once in a while, a really monster lightning storm.
There we go. Very literal, and it's keeping you up. And pirates or ninjas, who's tougher and why?
That's a good one. I think the ninjas are tougher. And I think the ninjas are tougher because, well, first of all, they can be solo. They're really meant to be solo, and they're masters. They have mastery at skills, and so that comes from time and discipline. And pirates are a little reckless, and so that makes them vulnerable.
Okay. I would have for sure thought you would go the pirate route just with your affiliation to the water, but I love the rationale. And
how do you know there's not some ninja pirates, by the way?
There could be. There actually could be. There are, I'm sure, that are not humans. And final question, what advice would you give to your younger self?
I would say what I said earlier about, what do I keep learning over and over, that's the thing I'd tell myself is like, hey, be patient. You're going to, get your heart's desire. You just have to, be genuine about it and be patient for it to happen. And it might not be how you think it is. I think sometimes that's a mistake that we make, at least that I've made throughout my life is, you have this goal and you say, I'm going to do this, thinking that's going to result in something other than actually what ends up resulting. And so you do it, and then you're kind of get there, and you're like, wow, that didn't really work out like I thought it was going to. And I think, I have a saying, no expectations, no disappointment. So don't put, I think if I had put less expectations on myself, first of all, and they might just be temporary, but I think that the disappointing aspect of a lot of things that I've, pursued would be a lot less. That's
a great note to wrap up on. And I thank you so much for your time, Laird.
No problem.
By far, it was the most interesting homework kind of preparing for this chat with you, because you just lead a fascinating life, and I'm a big fan. So I appreciate your time.
I thank you, Amy. And what do we say? Mahalo. Mahalo.
Mahalo. Okay. Sounds good. Take care.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Hey everyone, thanks for listening to the show. Hit me up on social media to let me know what you think. I'm at Amy Jo Martin on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. And I want to hear your Why Not Now moments so I can share them on the show. Just send me a note to whynotnow@amyjomartin.com. For show notes and other offers, you can visit amyjomartin.com/whynotnow. And while you're there, don't forget to sign up for my email newsletter for exclusive content and announcements. A big thanks to Rock Salt Music for all of the tunes by the talented John Coggins. And of course, a hat tip to Richard Brewer for editing and producing the show. I'll see you next time. And until then, why not now?